Good evening. This is the August 19th, 2019 Development Review Commission meeting. Could you call the order, please?
Polson,
Here.
Shear,
Here.
Baarty,
Here.
Silent,
Present.
Arthur,
Here.
Frankel,
Here.
Smith.
Here. Our first order of business is council update. Okay, that was great. Thank you, John. Now we move on to findings, which are,
And then you would go ahead and read the findings that you're considering?
okay. Findings are LU 190034, a request for approval of major variance to reduce the required 25-foot setback, front yard setback to 5.33 feet in order to construct a two-car garage. The site is located at 548 Ridgeway Road, 21E10AC09200. Staff coordinator is Evan Franstead, associate planner. Did everybody get a chance to read the findings?
Yes.
Anybody have anything to add or subtract?
Nothing. I would, go ahead.
Nothing for me.
Anyone? I would entertain a motion.
I would move that the draft findings, conclusions, and order for LU 190034 1979 be approved as submitted.
Seconded.
Polson,
Yes.
Shear,
Yes.
Baarty,
Yes.
Silent,
Yes.
Arthur,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Smith.
No. Okay, we go on to a public hearing, which is a continuation of a hearing from July 15th, 2019. It's for 499-19-01631, AP 1901, a request by Lynn Bertelsen for type 2 tree removal application to remove one 54-inch DBH Douglas fir tree. The site is located at 534 D Avenue. Staff coordinator is Ellen Davis, associate planning. The record is closed for written evidence in our deliberations. No additional testimony is permitted. We do have a technical issue we need to deal with.
For an exhibit, but at first we should actually read the admonishments and the conflicts again as it's reopening the hearing. So if the commission would bear with me, I'll do that if the chair would like. This request involves the application of the criteria and standards listed in the staff report, available from staff or has been available online. At the prior DRC meeting, the record was left open for additional written material only prior to commission deliberation. A potential conflict of interest is declared on behalf of each of the Development Review Commission members to the extent of their business or employment, which each will identify. And unless declared otherwise, the respective commission member does not have a known, present, or anticipated future business relationship with the project or the applicant. It's possible that a future business relationship could arise in the initiation, design, construction, or maintenance of a project through either the employment or business of the commission member personally or through a relative as defined in state statute. At this point, I'll ask if any of the commissioners wish to make any declarations with relation to ex parte contacts, including any site visits since the last public hearing, if they are biased on this application, to declare their business and employment, and if they have any additional conflicts of interest. So I think each declares your business or employment and whether you have additional conflicts.
Jason Frankel, branch manager here downtown Lake Oswego, longtime resident here as well. I've had no site visit, no other ex parte contacts, no bias, and no financial conflict.
Mark Silent, small business owner, no ex parte contact, no conflict of interest, no bias.
Good evening. I'm Randy Arthur. I'm a civil litigation attorney with the Portland, Oregon law firm of Bullivan Bailey, PC. As declared last time, I have no financial conflict of interest, no disqualifying bias. And I had, as I declared last time, well, actually, I did not make a site visit on this one, so I have no ex parte contacts either.
My name is Jeff Shear. I'm a retired contractor. I've not made a site visit. I've had no ex parte contacts, no bias, no financial conflict of interest, and I haven't made a site visit since the last meeting.
My name is David Polson. I'm a civil engineer. I have not made a site visit since my last visit. During that last visit, though, I did look at the route in question, so I took a close look at that. I've had no ex parte contact, I have no biases, and I have no financial conflicts of interest.
Greg Berardi, financial consultant. I have not visited the site. No ex parte contacts, no bias, and no financial conflicts of interest.
My name is Kirk Smith. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Aderwin. We ran the conflicts through our conflict system, and we found there were no conflicts with the applicant. I have not visited the site, have no ex parte contacts, no bias, no additional financial conflicts of interest. I have reviewed the tape and the deliberations online, though.
Okay, so for the record, Mr. Smith was not present at the first hearing, but you have reviewed the entire record and are prepared to, and are familiar with that and prepared to deliberate tonight, correct?
That's correct, and I did review the materials, both the original and the supplement that was provided to me.
Okay, thank you. Is there any member of the audience who wishes to challenge any commissioner's right to consider this application? And if not, we would be ready for the staff report. Although, Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned before, there is a procedural issue that staff has outlined in its memo with relation to one of the exhibits, which was Exhibit G214, which was received on August 5th, 2019. And as I understand, it contains, per staff's analysis, rebuttal of rebuttal. And as was mentioned in the memorandum from staff, well, maybe I'm getting ahead of you if you wish to address that, but that, in fact, the way staff reads the code is that you get an opportunity to submit additional evidence, an opportunity to rebut what was submitted in that additional period, but to rebut the rebuttal is going on. And so, and is not what is contemplated by the code. So, staff in that exhibit has marked out by red line those materials which staff considers to be rebuttal of rebuttal, or more formally called surrebuttal. And if the commission agrees with that, then it's recommended that the commission make a motion to strike those marked materials from the record for consideration.
Do we all understand what we're talking about here? Okay.
Yes.
Bert?
I move that the information that is stricken based on staff recommendation in the email from Mr. Perkins be stricken from the record.
I can second that.
Before the commission rules on that, is there anyone who wishes to object to the motion to strike that evidence? And hearing no objections, please proceed.
Call the roll.
Polson,
Yes.
Yeah.
Shear,
Yes.
Berardi,
Yes.
Silent. Yes. Arthur,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
And with that, I
So
believe
we-
we're ready for the staff report.
Yeah, we moved to the staff report.
Okay, good evening, Commissioners. Just to remind us what we're doing tonight, this is a continuation of a hearing that began on July 15th. So this is for AP 1901. And this site is located at 534 D Avenue at the corner of 6th and D Avenue. Again, the tree is approximately 54 inches in diameter, approximately 10.5 feet from the foundation of the existing home. A 13-inch root was one of the major items of discussion at the last hearing. At the last hearing, the commission and the applicants agreed to hold the record open for written testimony. We received new evidence between July 15th and July 29th. We received exhibits F5, 6, and 7, also G212 and G213. And then during the rebuttal period, which was 5 p.m. July 29th until 5 p.m. August 5th, we received exhibits F8, F9, F10, and exhibit G214, which we've already discussed. Based on the additional evidence that was submitted, staff has not changed our recommendation. We still recommend approval of the type 2 permit with conditions. And that is it. I'll turn this over for deliberations. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Who wants to go first?
Like it's me. I thought I was out of the limelight. I've looked at all the information that was submitted, including the structural engineer's report, and I'm sorry, what was the name of the engineer from Montana?
Perkins?
He was Perkins. He was a doctorate and my thoughts are that this tree is a 54-inch or maybe larger fir, and it's a truly magnificent tree, substantial tree, and for me to actually feel comfortable in just saying for its removal, I really needed to see more evidence than what has been submitted to us. And I think that report from that engineer kind of bears that out. He identifies a certain number of possibilities that could be the source of the structural damage. Could have been, ground settlement. It could have been, the presence of soil heaving from water being intruded into the, it just could be a number of things. It is, he brought out that it's not necessarily correlated that it was that root itself that led 100% to that damage to that building. And the root is a number of feet away from the corner. It looks like the cracking, that stair step cracking that we've seen is right at the corner of the building. So it's a distance away, so it's hard to correlate that root based upon the damage. The other thing is that I don't really know how much structural integrity has been jeopardized by the cracks that's there. Seems to me that everybody says that the damage is caused by the root, but I'm not convinced that there's enough significant. No one has proven to me that what we're seeing in the cracks has caused damage to that foundation that does not have any structural integrity anymore. The reason why I say that is because on the corner, if you exert a vertical force from the house, a load down, doesn't seem to me that foundation is weakened in any way. It's just there's a little stair step crack there, but from a vertical point of view, it still hold up the house, and it's still being held by the bearing pressure of the soil underneath. From a lateral point of view, it's not, and I don't want to bring my expertise as an engineer into this, but as the corner, seems to me that it would resist any lateral force either way. You go this way on the house or 90 degrees, whichever way that lateral force comes from, that crack, I think, would be resisted by the corner structure itself. So I'm not convinced that the house is in structural danger. And I haven't seen anything in the structural engineer's report that would collaborate that. The other thing is I'm also not convinced that there could not be something done to the foundation itself. If it was shown that there was structural weakness associated with this root, and it was shown that that root did, in fact, was the cause of that failure in the corner of the building, that I'm not convinced that something pretty simple could be installed to support that corner and repair that crack. I also understand that you can get underneath the house so you can address that foundation from both sides. So you can crawl in there and attack it and do something to that foundation from both sides of it to reinforce it. And something could be done around the root itself to give it some ability, since it's pretty deep, some ability to give it some growing room I think at a 13-inch root, it's not going to grow in diameter, let's say in the next 50 years, it would not grow all that appreciably much in diameter, and I think that we could accommodate that in a structural design. The reason why I'm bringing up all these issues because, I look back and I look at that tree, and it's a beautiful tree, and it's 10 feet away from the building, and I've just not seen, for me, I just don't see enough of a compelling reason to, just because of this one root and inability to deal with that one root. I'm not seeing a compelling reason to take out that tree. So I'll respond to others if they have different thoughts or the same thoughts, but that's basically how I'm feeling about it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the applicants going to the effort of having a supplemental report from a professional engineer. I expected in the supplemental report from Mr. Sherman to find a more declarative statement that the tree root was causing damage to the house. And I read it several times. I didn't see that. I'm looking at Exhibit F7 where the applicant talks about the root has continued to grow and has caused new damage. Both arborists hired by the applicant feel certain the root is causing the problem, but I didn't see that in the engineer's report, which is what I thought we had held the record open for. And I did agree, however, that the report from Mr. Sherman from Montana, I felt that because he hadn't inspected the site, that undermined the weight of that report for me. So I will confirm this later. I believe the staff is recommending this application be approved. And so that, for me, I'll probably be voting yes to approve it on the strength of the staff recommendation, given that the Montana professional didn't personally view the site, and I find nothing in the engineer's report from the applicant convincing me that the root is causing damage to the house. But that's probably how I'll vote. But I will listen to my other commissioners' deliberations.
Mr. Chairman, may I bring up a point on it? City Attorney doesn't argue the point either way, but as far as code interpretation, we have a couple different things we're hearing. One is, has the applicant established that the root is causing the damage? And that certainly is within the scope. Another is, are there things that could be done to the foundation instead of the tree to address the problem? And I invite, if that's the thinking of commissioners, to think about the code as to how you read that. What it says in subsection 3, the exceptions to subsection 3 in 5502.080 is if a tree is likely to or continue to cause damage to a permanent viable existing structure or to infrastructure such as utilities, et cetera, that cannot be remedied through reasonable tree maintenance or pruning. So is the code saying that if a tree is causing damage to a structure, that therefore the structure must be altered before the tree can be removed? Or if you read that very literally, as what they're saying is the structure being damaged, and if you can establish that, then therefore that's an exception to saving the tree. And then there's also the issue is the viability of the structure. If it's actually causing damage, but the house is still viable, is that still damage under that code? I'm not trying to mix things up here, but depending on how you decide, staff would appreciate some guidance for our findings as to how you are reading that. Again, one literal reading is, well, if the tree is in fact causing the damage, then the remedies are, can that not be fixed through reasonable tree maintenance or pruning? And if so, then the tree removal is allowed rather than requiring someone to alter a building, an existing building. It's different than under subsection B, where if you're doing development, for example, there's nothing there. Can you design your development with ridging and things like that to avoid the tree? But I'm not certain we've had a ruling or a staff application where an existing development you're required to modify the foundation to do root bridging if in fact the tree is causing damage. So I just toss that out there for your consideration.
I think the problem that I've heard from my colleagues and that I experienced myself in reviewing all these materials is that there is a failure to establish a cause-effect relationship And when I say a failure to establish that relationship, there is a single that I read report from a professional investigator, the structural engineer, who never came out and made such a statement. And that, my understanding was that we were asking several weeks ago for basically that statement. The statement had to be that the tree root was causing the problem, or at least a substantial amount of the problem that couldn't be addressed in any of the ways that were described. And that to me was how that report fell short.
Fair enough, and that certainly is the applicant's burden to establish that the tree is causing the damage. That's right.
I'm going to ask staff a financial question, or question regarding this. And I'm not sure if it applies or not, but if the owner were to want to sell the house, before when they sold it, you didn't know it was there, so you couldn't declare it. You now have a situation there where you have a root going into the foundation, and that may present anyone from wanting to purchase the home, or anyone wanting to lend, a bank wanting to lend because of the foundation and the potential. Is that something that you take into consideration here, or you just wait until they get to that point, and if a lender says, I'm not going to lend to a buyer because of that, is that an issue? Then wait till they come across that problem.
Well, if you're asking me if the code says that in fact it affects lending opportunities, but still you haven't established that the tree is likely to or will cause damage, then that's not covered in the code. I think likely to or will cause is important for this exception.
And I
It doesn't
think-
say about perception by lenders, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that I'm hearing from my peers that we do have multiple, we asked a question last time. We wanted the definitive, so we would know. And we have not got that definitive based on this. That was pretty standard across the board, what we asked for. Now, to answer yours, as a lender, I don't care about any of that. My inspector would have gone in and told me that root is causing that, so don't lend them money to buy that home. Then find my inspector and have them come out and do it. That's all we were asking for. We don't have that definitive. Sorry, we gave you a month to get it, and we've got almost identical to what we had. So, I mean, we have some more words, I totally get that, but we absolutely do not know that that root is the root cause to the damage. I do not think that you need to build up the structure, and I do agree, you know, what it says on here, that if reasonable tree maintenance and pruning is available to do that, 100%. However, it goes back to the one point. We asked for something to say that that root is causing that, and if we had that, then I would say this cannot be remedied through reasonable tree maintenance and pruning, so unfortunately, we cut it down. We don't have that.
Kurt?
Well, when I read. Sorry. When I read the exception that the applicant and staff was applying, that is, the tree is likely to or will continue to cause damage to a permanent structure that can't be remedied by reasonable tree maintenance. As I was reviewing the tape, I think Mr. Flanagan, who was the arborist, said that the root was exerting 45 pounds per square inch against the foundation. And when I heard that, I didn't think that was a lot of pressure from my unskilled engineering perspective. So then I thought, well, is there something else maybe that's causing this issue? And then there appears to be a whole slew of different theories on what could be causing the damage to the foundation. I mean, theoretically, because it's a 1940s cinder block foundation, it just might be old, and vibrations, and who knows what's causing this. I also was thinking, There appears to be a 13 and 14-inch root that's pressed against the foundation. I was thinking, and I'm not an arborist, why don't you just cut some of the root, not the whole root, just cut it back a little bit so that it's not, put a gap and have a barrier or something to maybe stop this, as opposed to taking down this huge tree that may or may not be causing damage to a structure, or could be remedied by, I don't know, a chainsaw, taking a foot off this, but all the other roots and everything keeps this tree up, so.
The one thing that I want to make sure you guys saw was that on Mr. Flanagan, the master arborist, he did come out in the evaluation of the 12.8-inch diameter root, the foundation on 534B. The root is growing through the foundation, and he has pictures of where a 13-inch rod went into where the root was. And it's not turned along the side of the foundation. The root is causing the damage to the foundation. I just, we may not have got that from the engineer, but we certainly got it from the arborist. Now, I do like the idea, and I have no idea if you can cut back a foot of the root and not affect the stabilization of the tree. Seems reasonable, but that hasn't been presented to us.
Well, it was the arborist would be able to say, if you cut that root off, it would kill the tree. I would listen to that. But if he says the pressure that the root is exerting on the foundation is causing the damage to the foundation, I can't listen to that. Because he's not a structural engineer, I don't think he's the right person to give that opinion.
Well, okay, my opinion, I think it is. And I think maybe just as much as big a question is with the amount of force that's putting on the unreinforced masonry foundation. It seems reasonable, it is, a reasonable person could assume that that's causing the damage, and it is causing, if not structural damage, what you would call architectural damage, which would create gaps in the siding and cause leaks. Which could be fixed, but I'm just saying it is causing structural damage to the structure.
Well, architecturally speaking.
Well, that's structural.
No, it's architectural.
Well, it's still part of the structure.
Architecture would be the aesthetic of it, and does it look good,
But I mean, you gotta it's gotta be rain tight, weather tight. And it looks to me, the pictures I saw, that, and I don't know that I have it right here in front of me, the corners are starting to open up, and when that happens, your weather tightness goes, which can affect the structure.
Yeah, but that's
structure.
You could, extrude something in there and just plug that up easy enough. I mean, concrete is a porous material.
Yes, it is.
Water will go through there.
Yep.
And I'm just saying this, you're right, it's gonna go through there easier than the rest of it, but you plug that up. The question of structural integrity, though. And that root may have an influence on that issue, but it doesn't have 100% influence of it, or we don't know if it has 100%. It could have a 2% issue for all I know. But I haven't seen anything in the structural reports by the structural engineer that correlates different possible forces to that damage. I think probably it's because he just couldn't, he just couldn't know. Now, I'm also interested in what the city attorney said about, the two different ways of thinking. One is it causing the damage? And as such, is it meet the code in terms of the criteria for removal? Or two, is there something that can be done to accommodate that root? Assuming that it is causing the damage, is it is it reasonable for us in the, without other information, to say, we think something else could be done to repair that foundation that allows that roof to be there without jeopardizing the structural integrity of the building, modifications to the foundation itself. And now, we're not obviously not going to come up with what that is as part of the commission, but if that is even a possibility, is that something that we could say, the applicant should have considered?
Well, I thought the city attorney was saying that we should really be, speaking for you, I apologize, my interpretation is that the code says it has to be remedied through reasonable tree maintenance and pruning, not doing something to the structure.
I know, and I saw B, though, on that. It says B as in boy, right on your screen. It says, alternative to the tree removal have been considered and no reasonable alternative exists to allow the property to be used as permitted in the zone. Well, I think it'd be a reasonable alternative to fix that foundation, and then the property could be used as permitted. That's my,
Under subsection B, that says, in making this determination, the city may consider alternative site plans or placement of structures, development purpose, or alternate landscape designs that would lessen impacts on trees so long as the alternatives continue to comply with the provisions of the code. I'll just say, as far as how staff has applied that, that has been for new development. In other words, consider, as long as you can have the same development opportunity that you had before, can you shift the, orientation of your home? Can you move it on the lot? Can you do bridge foundations and still do it? Again, maybe this is a case of first impression for the commission, but so far, at least staff has not read the damaging structure subsection as saying, well, we can require you to change your structure rather than saving the tree, in order to save the tree.
and I see your point there, but
An already built structure.
if A and B together, I'll use the word, the intent of it is we're going to give you some alternatives so that you could take steps to save this tree.
Understand, and I'm not being argumentative, but there's an or between those. So the subsection isn't applicable when A, if you can show the tree is causing damage to the structure that can't be remedied by pruning or maintaining the tree, or if alternatives have been considered in there. So one might argue that that is the choice. But again, even with that, B has not been applied, I don't want to speak for staff, in non-development circumstances when people have options for how they want to develop their property, then they must do this. Again, it would be a first, I think, for the DRC to say, well, if a structure is being damaged, if you can move the structure, do it. If it's cracking your driveway, you must move your driveway before you, an existing driveway, before you remove that tree. And again, it doesn't speak to structural integrity. A cracked driveway just might be aesthetic.
So I think what you're trying to say is that if we made a motion, then it should be such that we just say no, not make a motion that would bring B into consideration and suggest that, because if you say no, there is no other alternative for the property owner but to look for alternatives, rather than us tell them to look for alternatives.
I'm not sure if I may just say, no, you don't
Yeah.
get your permit. And you can do
Yeah.
that. Again, I'm not inviting that because we'll have to write findings. So if DRC wants to interpret the code in the way that's being suggested, of course, that's your prerogative. I'm just explaining, and I hope I'm not sounding argumentative, but I'm explaining how staff reads this and the literal reading of the code. But indeed, if you are going to say no, staff will need to write findings as to why under the code that's being done. So it'd be good to hear what the rationale is.
The reason you could list as the denial would be that you don't think it meets LOC 55.02.08, and you could list, doesn't meet under the exceptions and just leave it at that, for your findings.
Well,
And let somebody else interpret what, because that's how I'm looking at it, is there's a big difference here between the literal words used and A or B is giving, here's the range of things you get to consider. And to me, the intent of all that is, is that you should consider alternatives. And this is a unique circumstance. I would venture a guess that the DRC has never had to deal with a 13-inch root pushing up against, a building of this side made of a cinder block foundation. So that's.
So I'm a little, does the owner have the right, if we say you can't cut the tree down, to go and alter the root, cut the root, take the chainsaw is out of, do they have that?
To just cut the root off, again, I can't speak for that, but as I understand, the arborist's opinion was that would not be acceptable because it would kill the tree. But go ahead.
It sounds like that would harm the tree to a point that could be a violation of our tree code. So
That's what I wanted to find out.
That does not
If-
sound like a
That's
viable
right,
option.
it would be a violation of the tree code if they did.
Well, I'm sorry to answer that one, because I think we already have the answer, and that is, the arborist did say that if you cut that root, you'll most likely kill the tree.
That's right, I heard.
And so if the owner, knowing that, he would be opening himself up to liability in case that tree did die and fall.
Well, did the arborist say that if you cut an inch off, it's going to kill the tree? Or is it all the way to the trunk?
He said, no, if you sever the root at the foundation,
Oh, okay.
just, cut it right off. I don't know if you could trim, carve a couple inches off that. I would think that wouldn't work either, but that it didn't say.
I think the real problem is it's a great tree, and the engineer does recommend removing the tree and keep it from having to repair the foundation of the house. He does say that. It has encroached into the basement or into the foundation 13 inches, which is a lot.
Well, it's most likely gone all the way under the house, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah.
That root of
So
that
it's-
diameter is.
It's going to eventually create an issue for the house. So, it's an old house. It's an old tree.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't want to bring any expertise that I may or may not have as an engineer. We're just here to interpret the record. And there is nothing in the record that says one day that will be a problem with that to the house. Says it is one today. That's just the arborist saying that, though. The structural engineer did not conclude that, the root is causing the damage and do any kind of a structural analysis that I think that we were asking for.
So I'm saying we do a little test vote on this, or I have no problem doing a movement. Making a motion. But I would move for app 19-01, 499-19-01631 to be denied due to the fact of missing facts from that structural engineer.
Well, that's the reason I'd like to second that, but I think we ought to give other criteria. I mean, that, when they write findings, I don't think they're going to
Based
say.
on LOC 55-02-080, and the fact that there is an opportunity that there could actually be remedied through reasonable tree maintenance or pruning. Well,
Not section B?
no, I actually believe it, I believe B, I'm not moving a structure. I do think that we have a lot of questions in play.
Would it be appropriate for the motion to say, moving to turn down the application based on LOC 55.02.080 and leave it at that?
Well, if
That's not enough?
well, the findings are supposed to state what doesn't meet the criteria. And so, I guess, I mean, whatever you do, we will, of course, work with, we're at your service, but I guess to do it proproperly.
We need a little
there's supposed
more
to
than
be
just
reasons
that.
as to
Okay.
why it doesn't meet 080.
Okay, well, I can make one then.
No, that's fine. I'll remove mine. Let you-
Remove yours, okay.
Yep, remove.
Okay, I move to deny 499-19-01631 based upon Code Section 55.02.080, Section B, which cites that that an alternative could be considered for the alternative 3B, which cites that an alternative placement of structures, could be considered as part of the avoidance of the tree removal.
Well, how are they going to move the building, the foundation?
Placement of structure would be the foundation is a structure.
They're going to move their foundation?
We're going to do, you could redesign that foundation.
Can they work on, are they able to work on the foundation with the root right up against the foundation?
That's what I'm saying, that you can get it from both sides in this case, per one of the reports said that you could
How
access
about
it.
this? Why don't we do A or B, just like the code says?
Well, I can't see a criteria for A because,
Because it says 3 doesn't apply when A, da-da-da-da, like my idea, or B, your idea.
oh, okay, well, I guess the A would be if you could trim, and we don't know, you couldn't trim it.
We don't know.
We just know that you
No,
shouldn't
you
cut
can't,
it.
you can't cut it off, but what you're saying is if we, go flat top instead of full shave, or, we can trim it versus cutting the whole thing off. So I would stick with A and B, because I'm not a fan of moving a structure.
Well, I'm reaching a little bit. Placement of structure, placement of a foundation. But
Well, the code says that 3 doesn't apply when A or B, so I think the findings would be that either they can remedy through maintenance or pruning, or your placement of the structure is our finding.
Right, if the applicant can establish either A or B, then the exception applies. So I would agree with Commissioner Smith that if you want to deny, you should say why neither A nor B can be met.
Okay, I'll go with that.
Or whether there is no, the applicant has not established that they can get exception under either. So I don't know about the pruning, anyway.
Okay, so then the motion would read to deny 499-19-01631 because it does not meet Code 55.02.080, Section 3, under the exceptions section.
So, okay. Another alternative is if you think it could be met through trimming in some way, then you can say they have not shown that A is an exception, and then B only applies to new development. Maybe it sounds like you don't want to say that, but the B is not available to them because that is, or again, as an except to show, because there's no requirement to move whole houses and all. But that's up to you, of course, in your interpretation.
My interpretation is the intent.
Okay,
So are you saying A or B? Is that your motion?
Yeah, that's my motion, A or B.
Then I'll second that motion.
Before you take a roll call, just to be clear, a yes, the way you said the motion, the yes is saying yes to turn down the application?
Yes.
Okay, just so we're all
I said
clear.
to be denied.
I have a logical, a chain of logic that I'd like to test on my colleagues to see if this is how the thinking is now going. That under the exceptions, a tree is likely to or will continue to cause damage, et cetera, that the reason that that exception fails is because we have no compelling evidence that the tree is likely to or will continue to cause damage to the permanent structure. Is that correct?
Well, first of all, it has not been established it does cause the damage.
That's my point.
Oh.
Is that the reason that this exception cannot be invoked is because without the blessing, if you will, or the definitive opinion of a structural engineer, which is what we asked for, that the root causes the damage. Without that, which we do not, to my reading, currently have, we cannot invoke exception A.
Well, and
And even if it were true, the remedies provided in that exception, pruning and reasonable tree maintenance, would not eliminate the issue. So either way that you look at A, we cannot invoke A as an exception. Correct?
correct.
I'm talking about exception A under section 3.
It's like a double negative. It's not applicable when, you know.
Referring to the exceptions?
I am referring to the exceptions. The subsection 3 is not applicable when A. And we can't affirmatively state that that's the reason that we are seeing an exception. Okay? And then when it comes to B, I completely understand the difficulty, shall we say, in reading this. Because if you take the first sentence in isolation and completely disregard the latter portion of that exception, so just reading from alternatives to the tree removal have been considered up to permitted in the zone, I could make the argument that, yes, it kind of opens up the box to any remedy, and I could make the argument that the site no reason to allow the property to be used as permitted in the zone, that the site moving could be the reshaping, for example. So it's kind of in three-dimensional relationship to the root. It's not necessarily moving the entire structure of the house. It's reshaping the foundation and causing structural integrity on either side. I can kind of see how we could get to that. So I think that the motion has to be something along the lines of just that, that we can't actually utilize A as an exception. And B, I realize that it is out of precedent from previous interpretations of that. But I kind of feel like if part of our role and our mission is to always be respectful to these ancient giants that live in our community, that we should afford them every opportunity to be saved.
I don't think the applicants have tried to make an exception under B, have they? So that's another thing. No one is suggesting to you that they would get the exception under B. So you can do what you're saying, or you can simply say there's been no evidence that B applies. I mean, if you want to go there and make a ruling as to whether B would apply in the case of an existing structure, I guess you can. I'd suggest you don't need to. Nobody's suggesting to you they make it under B. They're suggesting they make it under A, which is the, in fact, is it causing damage that can't be remedied through tree pruning or maintenance? Am I correct about the application and the suggestion? So that's another way to avoid
At which point,
a watershed interpretation of the code that you don't have to make.
and at
That's a
that,
call, too.
at that point, we requested specifically, as I recall, the opinion of a structural engineer that the root did or did not cause the damage. And to my interpretation reading of that report, that was not definitively stated. I appreciate that that represented the opinion of others that were involved in this, but the structural engineer did not bring a gavel down and make that statement, at which point A no longer applies. It cannot be invoked as an exception.
If you find the applicant hasn't met burden by the greater weight of evidence of showing that the tree is causing damage, then A has not been met.
Randy?
Actually,
Thank you.
I would say that I'm, pardon me. I should
Please
have
go
asked
ahead,
it.
Director.
May I?
Yes, please.
If you look at, so there's, as you know, there's 5 criteria, well, actually 4 criteria that they have to meet, and then the 5th one is that they have to mitigate, and that's not a criterion, that's just a requirement. Criterion 1 says the tree removal is proposed because it is outgrown landscape area, which includes, it's outgrown its area, it's doing structural damage, that type of thing, or the removal is part of a landscape plan or in order to construct and development. Okay, this isn't a landscape plan, they're not constructing development. So your finding could be that they do not meet criterion 1, in which case you would never get to the exceptions because they don't meet the first criterion. The exceptions under A and B are the exception to criterion 3. So that is another option for you, is just to make the finding for criterion 1. That you believe that they have not shown that the removal is necessary because it has outgrown the landscape area and is doing damage to the structure.
Yes, which is pretty much the same as 3A.
Well, criterion 1 is its own standalone
Of course,
criterion.
yes, but if it's not doing damage to the structure, you don't meet 3A or 1, right?
Right.
Right, okay, so, indeed. I think those are two of the same findings as I understand. Because wasn't there a definition, I'll have to look at the staff report again, as to what outgrown its landscape area means?
Well, I thought the report went on and said it was a significant tree, and there's a whole analysis in the staff report under 3. So now, are we going to have to apply a different code section to with the application? I'm a little confused.
Well, I mean, for me,
Guys, excuse me, Randy has the floor.
Oh, well, thank
Sorry.
you. No, I'm sorry, I'm probably not going to say anything terribly profound. I did have a question for our city attorney. Attorney Powell, I understood you to say after I spoke earlier that as to exception A under 3, it's the applicant's burden to establish the tree is likely or will cause damage to a permanent structure. So my question is, does that mean that there's some evidence in the record that that's the case, or is it a standard of compelling or persuasive evidence?
It would be substantial evidence in the record. It doesn't have to be compelling evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt. In the event there is contrary evidence in the record, then you would decide by a preponderance of that evidence. So in other words, the greater weight, what convinces you, if someone's saying it is causing damage and someone's saying it isn't causing damage, where's the greater weight of evidence that convinces you? But it's not like a criminal, beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not like fraud, clear and convincing. It's more of a preponderance or a weight of evidence type standard.
Thank you.
As to 1A, the definition of outgrown landscape area. So for purposes of this section, a tree that is outgrown its landscape area may include, but not limited to, a tree that is grown such that damage to a structure or facility cannot be avoided by pruning or other maintenance. A tree that's grown too large for constrained space, et cetera. So it seems to me, and again, you're more expert in the tree code, but that 1 and 3A are kind of the same in this particular instance. Is it in fact causing damage? If it is not, then not only would you not meet the exception, but you wouldn't meet the criteria for the application, right?
Well, that is true. I guess my point is that 3 is a separate criterion. That's determining whether the removal would have a significant negative impact, and then that is an exception to that particular one.
Correct.
But my point is, the first one is, if you find that it's not causing damage, then they don't meet the first criterion. You have to meet all of them. You don't even
course.
get to the other ones.
Yes, of course, and that's the same consideration. Is it causing damage?
Yes,
by
that's-
preponderance? All I'm saying is
that's true.
the same issue is there.
I think we all agree it is a significant tree, and it would have a significant negative impact on
And
those
perhaps to me,
aesthetics.
what you're suggesting is that rather than parsing whether 3A or B apply, that instead of the commission's finding there isn't sufficient evidence to find there's damage, that they say under 1, and we don't have to get to 3A or B. The tree code kind of doubles up there a little bit, I think, so.
Eric?
I'm a little confused, just because, you're saying that.
Is your mic on? I'm sorry, I'm not.
Sorry. Are you saying that it says the tree is proposed for removal because it's outgrown its landscaping area? And so the finding would be, we find that the tree hasn't outgrown its landscape area?
Correct. And there is a definition of outgrown landscape area, which Mr. Powell just read, and it has to do, one of them is that it's doing, is or will likely damage.
It says a structure has grown such that damage to a structure or facility cannot be avoided by pruning or other maintenance. So it's kind of the same consideration.
What that
Okay.
and what that allows is for them, if we use number 1, it allows us to be unsure, which we are. We are unsure because we asked specifically for something. This is allowing us to go ahead, say, we did not get the information we asked for, so we are not sure that this is actually causing that.
No, we do not know.
So with that, utilizing number 1 is the route to go.
David?
This is similar
May I ask you a
to,
question?
Sure.
Would you like to restate or remove your motion?
Well, I think what Jessica brings up is pretty eloquent way of getting this done, because it does refer to below in the exceptions, it goes straight there. We have a definition of what outgrow the landscaping means with enough specificity that I think that it'd work for me. So yes, I would. I would like to revise my motion.
I just want to add that Jessica's comment here corrects a chain of thinking, because this subsection 3, the exceptions are not used to overcome number 1 or number 2, only number 3. And I think that at least I was probably still trying to apply them to any of the rules above. And so I thank you for that clarification.
So you withdraw your motion, you withdraw your second. Okay.
Okay.
So now we would look for a new motion.
All right, so I move that we deny 499-19-01631. Deny that application based upon LOC 55.02.080, Section 1. Specifically, that we do not know, or it has not been shown that the tree has outgrown its landscape area.
Second.
And may I ask that specifically in that it has not been shown that it has caused, at least by the greater weight of evidence, to be damaging.
Has not been shown by the greater weight of evidence.
Yeah, that the damage to a structure or facility that cannot be avoided by pruning or other maintenance. So, in other words, that's why you're finding under subsection 1. Am I putting words in your mouth, or is that?
Yes, you are, I'll take them.
Okay.
And I'll second you putting words in his mouth.
Any discussion? Could you call the roll?
Polson,
Yes.
Shear,
Yes.
Barardi,
Yes.
Silent,
Yes.
Arthur,
I'm voting yes. I do think there's some evidence of likely or will cause, but not a preponderance or greater weight of evidence.
Frankel,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
This is a tentative decision of the commission. It will become final upon adoption of written findings, conclusions, and an order on.
September
I'm not sure of the
4th.
date.
September 4th,
September 4th at 7 PM?
correct.
Thank you.
We'll be sure to read that language when the findings come out.
Okay, Okay, so our next order of business is schedule review and management update. Jessica?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just for our upcoming schedule, we have 2 items that are coming up. The first one would be on September 4th, and I do want to point out to the commission that is a Wednesday because Labor Day falls on a Monday, and anytime we have a holiday fall on a regular meeting, we would move to the Wednesday. So we'll meet in the same room, same time, 7 p.m., but it would be on Wednesday, September 4th. In addition to the findings for the application tonight, we will have application for a development review for Lake Ridge High School, I believe. Yeah, Lake Ridge High School, excuse me, I had to jog my memory. So that's the items we have for September 4th. And then right now, we do have a tree appeal scheduled for September 16th. But that is the only items we have coming up that I know of so far. I did have one other item I wanted to discuss with the commission briefly. The city manager's office has approached us asking me to talk to you about the possibility of providing electronic devices to our commissioners. This is something we do for our city councilors. And given the fact that you get large packets, a lot of them come just electronically. We do provide hard copies when needed. But if you had a type of device that would be more easy for you to use, such as a laptop with a touch screen where you had both a keyboard and the ability to zoom in and out on plans, swipe, and easily, move between documents, that could be something that could work better for you and that you could use at the dais and also at home. Or you could use something such as a tablet that would allow you to, if you wanted to make annotations, you could do a tablet or like a Surface type product where you could actually make annotations on the plans if you wanted to. We wanted to gauge what your interest was, if you would use such a device. Of course, this would be on loan from the city, and then at the end of your term, we would give it to another commissioner for reuse. But is this something that the commission would be interested in?
Gentlemen, what do you think?
Yes.
Excellent.
I think it'd be great.
And with that in mind, I could cease to receive all mailed products, paper products, and save the city the postage and the paper and the printing.
Okay. Any other comments?
Would it have internal storage? You would need to have that instead of being able to just access a website in case that we're in a hearing and we can't get to that. We got to have certainty that it's there.
Right. My suggestion, like a laptop with a touch screen would probably, in my opinion, would be most useful to me just because it acts like a normal laptop, so you could, make notes. You would obviously have the ability to save information on it. Of course, it's something that you should be careful. You should only use for city purposes because it could be open for public record if someone did a public records request. So that would be the advantage of using this rather than your own personal electronic device. But I could certainly talk to IT, and I think the idea is we might give you a choice. There are trade-offs. Obviously, if you had a tablet or a Surface, you're losing the keyboard and maybe storage ability, but you would maybe be able to more easily make annotations or that type of thing. So there are trade-offs, and we could talk about that more, but I think initially we were just wondering if you were interested.
Well, wouldn't we want a device, guys, that would have the code downloaded on it? And then we could get updates as they come out that automatically.
Well, ideally, what I do when I'm up here is I just bring it up from our web page because that one is always up to date. Our web version of the code is always up to date.
Okay, all right. And then,
So just
then if we got bigger drawings, we could have them made and pick them up.
Yeah, you could do that, or, we would give you a sizable screen. It would be about a 15.5-inch screen is what we're thinking. So you could actually view the plans, and if you have a touch screen, you can actually easily zoom in and out on it. So you may not need large plans, but of course, if you wanted them, we'd be happy to provide that.
I think it'd be great because I personally, a lot of times, I'm searching around for like references in the staff report, and I'm flipping pages, and I'm thinking if it's on the computer, I can search. So it would be huge. instead of stickies and notes and tabs trying to figure out, I think that would be awesome, especially if it's all just there. So,
Are you gonna have any paper copies for us?
We
that
would
would
always,
not-
we always have that available upon request, yes, but it would not be the default unless we were certain that the plans were so large or unwieldy that we just thought that it would be more convenient. So we could always make that call.
It's just that, for, a career of dealing with, large sheets of paper, to go to the front sheet and go to the index and go to that sheet is probably quicker on a paper set than it would be on an electronic one. Just, I have to trust me on that. It just, there are times when that paper set can get something pretty fast.
Right.
I want to find out where something is, go to the front cover sheet, boom, right to it. So I don't need to have that paper reproduced for me on every case. But if I had it back here, in case I was, I really need to get to it fast.
Right.
And I didn't want to, kind of flip through this electronic file, and be frustrated by that.
But to answer your question, yes, I think we'll entertain it.
Okay.
I think that was the original question. Yeah, I think that we'd entertain.
I think everybody's in favor of it.
Yeah, as long as it has a fast graphics card for my, no, never mind, just trying.
All right, I'll let the city manager's office know, and we'll be back to you with some more information.
Is there any other business?
That's it.
Okay, we'll see you all on September 4th. Let us know if you can't make it.